All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Ben's Eagle Office Hours. I'm so excited. We do these every week. Every Thursday at 3 p.m. I jump on YouTube Live. Members come in, they say hi, they ask questions, they post in the comments, they let me know where they're from. They let me know the type of music they play, the type of music they listen to. Post a link to your website. If you have a website built with Ben Ziegel, post it in the chat so I can check it out. I'm always curious. Of course, being a website builder, we're always curious to see websites and musicians are putting together. So feel free to pop it in there. And a little extra bonus, first person that posts their website link in the chat, I'll give you a free sort of mini site review on the spot right now. Take a look at your website, see what you've got going on there, give you some feedback and maybe some thoughts on what you can add to it moving forward to improve it. If you're watching the replay of this after the fact, don't be shy, post your name, same information, same thing I just mentioned. Just post it in the comments down below. We check those comments regularly so I can get back to you there. And if you would like a free site review, somebody to take a look at your website and give you some feedback, just post it in the link down there. Post it in the comments down there below, and I'll have somebody get back to you within a couple of days. So post it right down there. The topic today is really interesting. So this was a guest post. This was a blog that was done for the bandseagle.com blog about 2 weeks ago. And I found it really interesting. This was a more along the lines of like, I guess you could call it an inspirational post, more so than something technical, more so than direct music industry advice. This is one of those kinds of posts where it's kind of, yeah, inspirational is the word that I could use. There are things to keep in mind on your journey as a musician that to keep you from getting discouraged, to keep you motivated, to kind of understand what's happening to you along the way as you go, as you ride those ups and downs of the career of the average independent musician. So what I thought was, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at each one and let's see what we think and let's talk about it a little bit because it's interesting whether or not these are all completely applicable for you, whether or not you agree necessarily with all of them. I think they're all worth a little bit of conversation here. So let's take a look. Let me bring it up again. You can find this blog post and any other blog posts that we might be talking about on these lives. You can find them all at bandseagle.com. And of course, we do similar style videos here on the channel. So of course, you found the channel, you're watching the live right here. But if you're not subscribed, click subscribe, give it a like, and we post weekly. Not only do we do the lives, but we post more curated videos weekly where they're feature walkthroughs for Ben Ziegel. We have those as well. So the technical aspect of things, but we also do kind of music industry tips and tricks. So keep an eye out for those. All right, let's get the screen share going. So 6 things every artist should know. Okay, so let's take a look at these and see what we think. So number 1 is going to be that not everyone is going to be for you. Okay, now this I find really interesting because along the way, when you're performing as an independent musician or as a band, when you're putting music out there, when you're anytime you're producing any kind of art and putting it out there for consumption, there's going to be a certain amount, there's going to be criticism, there's going to be judgment, whether it's positive or negative, or whether it's just constructive. There's going to be feedback that you're going to get along the way. So I think this is a good one. And this is a good one to start off with because as you know, my background, I was a musician, God, about 20 years ago now is when I probably stopped for the most part, kept doing it for a couple of years after that, singing in some different cover bands. But for the most part, that was stopped about 20 years ago. And after that, I was kind of involved in the management of bands for a few years there. There were kind of 3 big performing acts in Montreal that I managed. So I was familiar. This one kind of hits home for me because when you're representing a band and you're going around pitching them to different venues, to different bookers, talking to industry reps, you do get feedback. You do get feedback on the live performance. You get feedback on their recordings. You get feedback on everything. And so staying positive and not getting too high or not getting too low at any point is very relevant. So I would strongly agree with number 1 over here. So if there's going to be people who don't like what you're doing, there's going to be people who think that it's not good enough for what it is. There's going to be people that think everything you could possibly imagine. So I like this one, not to take anything too personally. In fact, what I just said, don't get too high on the highs and don't get too lows on the lows because you're going to get both. You're going to get both. I think the most important thing is just believing in what you're doing. And if I'm not mistaken, that's one thing that's coming a little bit later. But if you believe in what you're doing and you enjoy what you're doing, that's the big thing. Okay. With any kind of artistic, creative venture that you could go off on, I was about to say adventure, which I guess it is, but any creative venture that you can embark on, as long as you believe in what you're doing and it's fulfilling to you in one way, shape, or form, right? And you're getting some kind of creative satisfaction out of it, you're having fun, and you think it's leading towards something constructive, then, take the negative criticism for whatever it is. Listen, if it's something that you think is relevant or valid, then make the appropriate adjustments. But if not, just move on, keep doing your thing. Number two that they have here, okay, niche, niche, niche. Find your niche. So, yes, okay. So, this is important for a couple of different reasons. I think this one is kind of obvious. I'm going to give this one a check mark too. I'll agree with this one. But finding your niche is super relevant because no matter what kind of act you are, you need, and this goes for any kind of creative, again, I'll use that venture, endeavor. Maybe endeavor is a better word. Any kind of creative endeavor, if you're not separating yourself from the pack, of course, then you're not going to be separated from the pack. Now, it could just be your immense artistic talent as a musician or as a songwriter, whatever it might be, that's going to separate you from the pack. And of course, you want to believe in yourself, and hopefully that does separate you. So it could just be that. But most of the time you need to find something, as they say, a gimmick, right? Something that's going to either part of your presentation, part of your live performance, your part of your marketing campaigns, whatever it might be, something that is going to separate you from the pack being similar artists of a similar genre, of the same genre, right? So yeah, definitely find your niche. I would agree with this one completely. I think there's I've seen, at least in the Montreal music scene here where I live, there were a couple of bands that really thrived on this. Actually, one band that I managed back in the day, they were an amazing they were all classically trained musicians that came out of a music school here. One of the French universities in Montreal, Université de Montréal, had a music program. And so there were a couple of them that came out of this music program. One of them came out of the McGill University, which is one of the big English universities here in Montreal. And so there were a group of classically trained musicians who were really into what at the time was kind of like French European from France, sort of like almost like funk, but like the progressive rock version of funk. So if you think like Tool was a funk band, there was like a lot of bands coming out of Paris at the time that played this sort of really progressive funk rock that was really just experimental and all over the place. And they were big fans of this, and being sort of classically trained musicians, they were really inspired by this music, and they wanted to do something kind of similar. So they had a couple of songs that were basically covers of a couple of these bands. And then they, aside from that, they were actually kind of like an improvisational sort of just like jam band on stage until they eventually recorded their first album. But they were known for their live performance, and that was their niche. They would go on stage and they would just improvise for 30, 40 minutes, and they would do these really sort of impressive, progressive, funky tracks that just built and built and built, that had amazing groovy bass lines, and the drumming was just like jazz drumming, but to another level. And it would get people dancing. I would see sometimes in these clubs, like little clubs with maybe like 40, 50 tables. So maybe fitting 150 or so people. People would just move the tables to the side. If any other band was playing, people would just be sitting there at their table, kind of tapping their foot, ordering drinks. People would push the tables to the side of the room and start dancing. It was just like uncontrollable how people would just, this music made people go crazy. They just had to dance no matter how the venue was set up, and just they literally pushed the tables to the side, which I'd never seen before. And that was their niche. And you know what? They never sort of made it as recording artists, but I managed them for 3 years, and they had a couple of songs that made it onto various playlists and radio stations here, but never really beyond that. They never got signed to any label. They never really made any kind of legitimate money off of it, aside from the live performances. Every time they did a show, it would be completely sold out, and they would sell merch. They made t-shirts. So they did make money. They had every time they played a show, they would make a profit from it, but it wasn't like they became successful sort of recording artists off of it. But they found this niche and they went all in on it, and they advertised their shows as like being dance parties, and that was a big thing. So once we realized, I say they, but I mean I was part of the team. So once we realized that these concerts that they were doing basically were becoming dance parties, we started marketing them as that. So of course it was the band, but we would find themed dance parties. I remember one, we did this sort of like steampunk inspired like jazz like Victorian style dance party, and I don't remember the exact name of it. This was going back like 20 years, but the posters were all themed to this, and it was kind of like, "Come join us for this crazy night of dance," and then like featuring the band name, and they were kind of like the house band that was going to be the soundtrack to this party, and that's how we marketed the shows. And it was really cool, and it worked, and that was their niche. And you know what? Unfortunately, not every successful performing band is going to make it big as a recording artist, but they found their niche and they made it work for a lot of years. So yeah, I definitely agree with niche, niche, niche. That's a big one. Number three, art is selfish. Performance is selfless. So this kind of builds off the first thing that I was saying. Number one, when we kind of got into that, I think this is a build off of that, where art is selfish in the sense that you need to be invested into it. So, that like that first line should always create art for yourself, but when you're performing, your art and expression is for others. I don't know if I necessarily, and again, this is all semi subjective. I don't know if I would 100% put this on my list of top six. So maybe I'll give this a semi check mark, half a check mark. Can you put it that way? But it's relevant either way, whether it be in my top six or not. It's definitely true. I think, art should be selfish to begin with, in the sense that you should be doing something that's fulfilling to you, something that's going to make you keep you inspired, something that's going to not, that's going to prevent you from getting bored with whatever it is you're doing. Right. By the way, I'll just mention again before we move on here, we have a couple of, the live viewers always go up and down, but if you're watching this, say hi in the chat. Let me know your name, where you're from. Let me know what kind of music you play, what kind of music you like. And if you have a website, post a link to your website. So yeah, number three, yeah, half check mark. Number four, master the basics. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that's an easy one. I think that's a gimme. All right. Anytime if you're going to be striving to master any kind of art, especially in music, whatever it is, then definitely mastering the basics is key there. I think going back to my example in number two, the niche, 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 when I was talking about that band that I was managing, I think this applies because if you can master the basics, there's some bands that I've seen where they have their set list. So maybe they'll have a 10-song set list that they do. Maybe there's some covers in there, and then there's some originals mixed together. And they learn those songs, and they know how to play those songs, and they practice those songs, and they go and they perform those songs. And that's amazing. That's great. That is what it is. But part of a dynamic live performance is being able to improvise. No matter what style of music you're playing, if you can feed off the audience, if you can feed off the people there who react to something specifically, who want more, maybe you'll break off of a solo into something that's more of an improv. Maybe you'll be playing around between songs, and that'll turn into an improv jam that people are going to get into. Then all of a sudden, people are dancing or moving around to this improv jam that you have, and they feel your energy on stage, and they're feeding off your energy, and it becomes this whole amazing, unique live experience. I think to be able to successfully accomplish that part of the live performance, mastering the basics is kind of key, because if you need to be able to completely understand the basics of music, I mean, to be able to feed off and riff off your fellow bandmates, to feel a groove that's going on with the bassist, and for the drummer to pick up on that, and for the guitarist to know, okay, what notes are going to work here, and how should I support this? How can I jump in here that's going to make sense and is going to work? So yeah, mastering the basics, I think, is important in that sense as well. And of course, just anytime you're learning an instrument, master the basics, right? Kind of goes without saying. So yeah, I'll give that one a check mark. Why not? Jack of all trades, pro at one. Yeah, I would say that goes back to number four. Similar, I'd give the similar reasoning there. I think if you can be a absolute, maybe say virtuoso, but if you can master whatever it is that you do, specifically whatever your role is in the band, whatever your uh, unique skill is as a performer, if you can master that, and then but still have a lot of other skills that you can draw on, I think it just helps to be able to understand what other people are doing too, right? If you're primarily a guitarist in your band, but you also have an understanding of how to play drums, then I think, not only will you have more sympathy for the drummer, but again, during the writing process, during the practicing process, during the live performance, you'll be able to riff off them a little bit better, and you'll have a better understanding of what it is that they're doing. So yeah, I'd say that goes into it. Would I include that in my top six if I was doing this myself? Man, yeah. I mean, I'll give it a half. I'll give it a half check mark. Might not be in my top six, but definitely makes sense. Yeah, and keep going. Look, I think this is something that's really relevant in 2024, going on 2025. I think be relevant in 2025. But keep on going, I think, because these days there's such an abundance of content, and we're bombarded by options when it comes to content. So you might get a little bit frustrated. Like, let's say you're trying to break through on something like TikTok, for example. So you've heard that TikTok is fantastic to get discovered as a musician. It's a good opportunity to be able to get your music in front of new audiences kind of randomly, and maybe discover some new fans, which it is. It absolutely is. So maybe you post a couple of videos over there, you put together some stuff, and then, no, it's not working so much. I only got like 50 views on this one, maybe 80 views on this one, but no likes or comments or anything, no shares. So it's kind of died out. So in this day and age, especially when we say keep going, don't, if it's something, you got to stick with things. Just because something doesn't work in the first years, just because something doesn't work in the first couple of months, doesn't mean it's not going to work. And there's plenty of examples of that. I've seen plenty of examples of YouTube channels that I've worked on or with that did not work for 2 years, but they stayed consistent with it. And then something happened where it popped off and they blew up, and it got to the point that they wanted it to get to, just because of a lucky break in the algorithm, or a lucky break with a guest, or a collab with somebody else that just came along, whatever it might be. Or they just eventually tweaked and what they were doing just enough. There's enough examples of bands out there that were doing what they were doing for a little while, and their first 1-2 albums just didn't really pop off, and then all of a sudden they have one that hits it big and takes them to another level, right? There's plenty of examples of bands out there who do that. So I mean, and that applies to any kind of creative art that you're going to be doing. I think just sticking with it, keeping on going, because another benefit of keeping on going, so I definitely agree with this one. I'll give it a check mark on my top 6 list. But the benefit of just keeping on going is that you're going to get better. The more practice that you get as you go on, it's just going to make you get better and better and better, right? At that specific thing that you're doing, that specific type of music that you're playing, or just better at being a recording artist, better at being a live performer, better at being a band live on stage, have a better understanding of what it takes to write a song, to record a song properly, right? These are things that you're just going to get better and better and better at. So yeah, definitely number 6, keep going. That gets a check mark from Joe over here for sure. All right, we've had a good amount of viewers in here, in and out. But again, if you're watching the replay of this, you have any questions or just want to introduce yourself, comment down below. Of course, keep an eye. We do these lives once a week, Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern time here. We also post on the YouTube channel once a week. Again, some of it's kind of just Bandzoogle related, like feature walkthroughs or technical stuff, but we also post just what we call in our music marketing advice playlist there. We post a couple of videos there a month. So keep an eye open for that. And if you have any questions at all about Bandzoogle, if you're not a member, but you're curious about using any of our features or building a website for your music, there's a link in the description down below that you can use to get 15% off. If it's not in this video, check any of our other videos. It might not be in the lives. I might have to fix that. But if you're interested and you don't see the link down below, click on any of the other videos in the channel. You should see the link at the top of the description. And it's for 15% off. It'll give you 30 days free and 15% off the first year. So if you want to give Bandzoogle a try, definitely check it out there. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you next time.